Welcome back to the 6th episode of the Level Up podcast, where we ensure that you get involved and become a part of the sector that's building the future. Now, if you've just joined us, please make sure you head over to all our socials, just so you get updated with all the content and subject matter that we've touched on in the past few episodes. Now, if you've just joined us, a very good morning or welcome to you at whatever time you are watching this. My name is Valerie Makgetlaneng, and I'm going to be your host for the 6th edition of the Level Up podcast. Now, my guest today is a walking encyclopedia. Now, his name is Mr. Tebello Mokoena. He is a senior manager at Services SETA when it comes to quality assurance, and he joins us today to give us a little bit more insight on all these industries, specifically the artisans, and how we can become a part of that specific sector. Now, Mr. Mokoena, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the Level Up podcast.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Now, let's talk a little bit about your scope. Now, senior manager at Services SETA in quality assurance. What does that mean? What does it mean to have the job title that you have?
Yes, it's quite a broad scope which encompasses work in accreditation, and I'll unpack accreditation is quality assurance support, and then assessments and certification.
Right.
If we just look at accreditation, so you accredit a legal person, which would be an entity, and then you accredit that entity against an existing qualification. And then you also accredit assessment centers. Again, it must be a legal person. You accredit that entity against an existing qualification. So accreditation with this also involves registration of individuals, the professionals that are supporting implementation of learning, and we call them subject matter experts. Old language, assessors, CTAs as well as workplace mentors. And then we also approve workplaces of what accreditation entails. It involves the monitoring activities of entities that are affected during implementation to make sure that they implement learning if it's aligned to the dictates of the curricula. And then on the other end, assessment comes at the end after implementation, and it involves routine examination, oral examinations, and the moderation as those examinations, and then at the end, learners that are found to be competent, they are to issue certificates against the qualifications that they were enrolled in the first place.
Sounds like a very broad spectrum of what you do, and a lot of documentation, which I can imagine can be a little bit tedious, but that's oftentimes where the gap lies when it comes to progression of any kind of initiative or campaign is probably the depths of the documentation. Have you found that maybe that's where the delay comes when it comes to implementation of all of these, when you are looking at all the projects that you're working on and you're seeing what could be the delay or what is delaying the turnaround? Does it oftentimes revert back to exactly that, the documentation?
Indeed. It reverts back to documentation. Let's just take a typical example. If a training provider implements learning and then they submit a request for external moderation, there is a bit of quality assurance that gets to be involved in making sure that the learner details are correct, the qualification, and the packaging of that request as well. The longer there is a remediation, the longer it takes for that external moderation to be scheduled. And then the longer it takes for the learners to be certificated. So indeed, it does require for the paperwork to be on the spot without the requirement for remediation.
Right. I want to go back to something you spoke about in the beginning, where you said you've now changed the title that you are using to call, the likes of facilitators and educators to subject matter experts. What does it take to be a subject matter expert? Because maybe I think I'm an expert at something, and you'll come around and say, well, actually, you don't have this, you don't have that, you don't have, so you wouldn't be considered a subject matter expert. But what does that term mean?
Okay. It is a collection of attributes that an individual possesses, which then qualifies that person to be considered as a subject. Now, those attributes involve qualifications, and the experience, including in some instances additional training which leads to a professional designation where such professional designation exists. But it also implies in the context of training that the person has been trained as what we call an ETDP practitioner.
Okay.
So you'll have ETDP practitioner, education, training, and development practitioner.
Gotcha.
So you have somebody, for an example, who is trained in PR and communications. That person is a subject matter expert insofar as public relations and communications is concerned. For that person to play a role in the implementation of learning, we have to supplement the training that they have with training on how to facilitate learning, how to assess learning, how to moderate learning, so that that person then is equipped with those additional skills of imparting the knowledge that they already have in an organized manner that leads to the outcomes as expected in the qualification.
Sure. And I mean, we've touched on quite a few, I would say, industries or sectors on the show. We've done a little bit of travel and tourism. We've also looked into many others like beauty and so forth. But I want to talk specifically about artisans. When we say artisans, I mean, in English, I wouldn't say it's work that uses your hands, but what would it mean to be an artisan specifically when we look at, the programs that are run within Services SETA?
Indeed. So an artisan is a form of a trade or a form of an occupation that requires using one's hands and to do work or to produce products, which involves, in some instances, machinery. For a person to be regarded as an artisan, the person should have gone through a training under the tutelage of an experienced artisan. So there's 3 elements of that training. It is the theoretical training, it is the practical training, as well as the workplace training. Now you'll ask, what is the difference between practical and workplace training? So practical could also be in the context of a simulation.
Okay.
If you take, for an example, somebody who's going to drive these huge trucks that are used in mining operations to move large amounts of whether it's soil that has been extracted from the ground. Those people are taken first and foremost through a simulation where they sit in a cockpit and there's a computer which simulates that huge truck. And they first have to pass the simulation because the cost of putting somebody into that truck and they do something wrong and it gets damaged can just be huge. So that's the difference between the two. And then workplace experience basically is having learned the theory and the practical, you are now taking those components and using the embedded knowledge in a workplace context where you're actually doing it, not in a simulation.
Right. And if I look at, some of the jobs that are within the sector, things like, being a mechanic, being a plumber or any one of those, if I have the necessary skills, but I don't have the documentation or let's say I've learned from my dad who has been doing this for 15 years and I have all of those skills and the tools and that, but I don't have the actual, confirmation to say, yes, you are a qualified or you have done this, then what? Would there be a way to work around that to ensure that I'm still able to join on the program?
Indeed, there is. And typically such a person will go into a learning program that is called recognition of prior learning. Or artisan recognition of prior learning. Okay. And that learning program has 3 critical components. It is pre-assessment. So pre-assessment is basically an exercise which is conducted against the learner to test and say, if the qualification is a mechanic,
right,
and the scope of learning involves A up to Z, you are pre-assessed to say, are you from A to Z, where are you? Are you at H? Are you at M? Or where are you? And that then determines your SE's status.
Okay.
That's pre-assessment. The second one then is gap learning. So gap learning then basically closes the gap between where you are and where you should be.
You need to be, right.
And then the last one then becomes a final assessment. So the final assessment will then be in the form of a trade test, where as a learning mechanic, you are then put through your paces. And there's a a person who is basically assessing you and ticking whether you are doing the right things, the way you are supposed to do them. And then in the end, that person then determines that you are actually a competent mechanic. And then you are then issued with a trade test certificate that confirms that you are a knowledgeable mechanic.
Right. And it seems as though the processes are in place. There's steps that need to be followed. But in your experience as a senior manager, when it comes to quality assurance, where have your difficulties come from in ensuring that all of these are implemented, or perhaps filling gaps that you feel like as quality assurance, this is something that gets us perhaps every year, every term, or whatsoever? What are some of the difficulties that you've experienced within your department?
Okay, so let's just stick to the Artisan as a learning program, for an example. Now, the regulations in South Africa are quite strict, given the seriousness of some of the trades. Take an electrician who comes to your house to wire up your house or to link up your appliances and that. If the person is a chainsaw, has not been trained, the consequences could be quite dire. As a result, there are stringent regulations. So for somebody who says, I've been working with my father as an apprentice of some sort, as an electrician, you have to have a paper trail that demonstrates that this person has been in a workplace and has been exposed to X, Y, Z. It is the absence of that paper trail that often delays the certification process. So because what you don't want is to rely on somebody say so and then take a person through a learning program and that person is then certificated, but that person actually and they don't know what they are doing. These are some of the challenges that we have. And so as a result of that, we then tend to have delays. In some instances, you might find that individuals are foreign nationals, based in whatever country that they come from, and the standards and the regulations that apply to their country kind of hours, and the time that it takes bring together that paper trail that result in us being comfortable that this person meets the requirements and therefore can then be taken through their paces, through a trade test, does take some time. Yes.
Let's talk chances, because many of them exist in every industry. I mean, have you experienced that? And I think that comes with quality assurances to, see that and say, okay, this is a form of way that they can, scam getting into this. Have you seen fake, perhaps paper trail, or people, that come with experience that was never there, non-existent? And what has been the result of that? I ask this question because I think oftentimes we talk about it all the time that, there's chances and all of that. But like you said, these are dire situations that could result in very harmful things that can occur. So in your experience, what are some of those little nuggets that you've seen to show you, hey, it actually is real?
Yes.
And we do need to take, the quality assurance that we do as Services SETA quite serious.
Indeed. So typically a person will submit a portfolio of evidence, which is through the reference letters that says, I worked for company XYZ from this period to this period, and this is what I was doing. And then I moved from that company, I worked for this company, did XYZ. Now, the letters of reference collectively demonstrates what the person has been exposed to against the trade, and then tells you whether that person, if it is A up to Z, whether the person is at an L or at an M or at an N. Now, if when you are calling to confirm that company, number one, exists, secondly, the company knows this person, you find that in some instances, it's a non-existent company. So somebody generated these letters using a fake company. Or if the company exists, you find that they don't have a knowledge of such a person. And so those are your telltale signs that no, something is quite not kosher in this instance. And therefore, when you dig deeper, then you realize that no, this person is a chainsaw. In some instances, it might be a person that assumes another person's identity. Who in some instances that person is already deceased, and so then that's when you discover that actually this person is a chainsaw. But they do in some instances pass through the cracks, and maybe that done will check somewhere. When you submit it further, Thankfully, because of those check and balances, it's been picked up at the later stage that no, this person is not what they claim to be, and the certification is not issued as a result.
Don't be that guy. You won't get through the cracks. So just, I think, go through the right channels just to be able to get in touch. And if you are that has some form of experience, do get involved and ensure that you uplift yourself and learn all these necessary tools. Now, if I am an artisan, perhaps, and I don't know how to get involved, perhaps should I go for a short course? How would be the best way for me to, get started as an artisan so that I'm able to get into a learnership program?
Okay, so there's various ways in which a person can get involved. A person, a learner who has a matric, can go through a TVET college where they can then get the basic training, and then depending on the nature of the learning program, usually it is between 2.5 years to 3.5 years.
Right.
And then thereafter, having learned and having been exposed to workplace experience, you are then sent to a trade test center for testing. Or you can go into an apprenticeship. So an apprenticeship is where an existing mechanic who has a workshop somewhere in town tests under their wing and expose you to the nuances of being a mechanic, which involves largely practical training.
Right.
And that practical training is then supplemented by some theoretical training so that at the end, you have a combination of both. And then from there, then you will be sent for a trade test. And after that trade test, then you are issued with a certificate. Or you can work under somebody for a number of years. And then once you feel that you are now confident, you can approach your nearest recognition of prior learning center and say, this is who I am. And then the cycle that I spoke about of RPL, where they will assess you.
Yeah.
And then from there, if there's a need for gap training, they will expose you to gap training. And then thereafter, then you go for a trade test and you are certificated as an artisan.
What I love specifically is that most industries overlap when it comes to one thing, and that's ensuring, as you can hear from Mr. Mokoena, is that you keep a trail of all the stuff that you're doing, keep a trail of the work, keep a trail, pictures or references, so that when you do take that next step, you are able to look back and say, okay, this is something that I've actually done, and there's proof that you were able to do that, just so that it does not go to waste. When I think of all of these, opportunities, and you say TVET colleges, most people feel like there's an age gap, where after this gap, where I'm no longer, let's say, even part of the youth, 18 to 35, I can't go back to school. What am I doing at 45 going back to school? Or do you feel like, specifically when it comes to artisans, that there's an age gap that one must be able to, make the step in, or you could join it at any point in your life?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
You'll find that somebody has worked at an auto shop for the rest of their lives, and have been doing one thing, maybe to change wheels and then put in new tires, or working with starters or electrics of the car. That person still has an opportunity to get involved and become a fully fledged artisan as a motor mechanic.
Yeah.
So with that experience that the person has, they can then go through RPL and then go through gap training, and then thereafter be trade tested as a mechanic, and then still receive their certification as a tradesperson. So there's no age limit per se, as long as a person still has a good eyesight and there are no health issues. Because in some trades, they will do require that you must have a certificate from a doctor that confirms that you are healthy and fit. So those become the requirements.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that would have been my follow-up question, is to say, all the entry points are the same. There's not one to say when you're 35, perhaps you will have to go through this channel, or when you're 45, you have to go through this channel. Essentially, all entry points are the same. So this information will be a blanket approach to everyone. And when it comes to your experience, what are some of the things that are important that are learned within this craft that it could even be passed on to other industries? I'm talking things like you mentioned, health and safety. That's also important when it comes to any occupation, when it comes to people skills and stuff like that. Are there specific skills that artisans are learning that could perhaps overlap into other departments?
Yes, there are. I mean, typically artisans are trained through a combination of the so-called technical or hard skills and a little bit of soft skills. Now, take a person who has been a hairdresser for the rest of their lives. working at a salon, working for somebody else, that person in the course of being a hairdresser learns a lot of things, including first aid, including communication, including how to balance the books,
Is range of things. And those are the space you can use when not K business that different from the hairdresser and salon that you will work. It's more base piece up. We can use.
Sure. Some beautiful stuff that Mr. Tebello Mokoena is giving you. And of course, you can head over to all of our websites just to be able to see all of this information. Word of advice. Anyone that's watching this right now that feels like, you know what, I actually am an artist. But I don't know where to start. I don't know how to go about it. I don't even know if I'll get the opportunity. Perhaps I don't know anyone in this field. What advice would you give them? You can let them know straight to the camera.
Yes. Arm yourself with information. Go into the wild web, search trades, search SETA website, search the QCTO, the Department of Higher Education and Training, and get the information. With that information, approach SETAs for information. You'll get guidance that supplements what you've already learned from the website. And then with that, you can then be able to choose and say, this is the route that I want to go, depending on where you are at. So if you are a mature person that has been working but wants to formalize the learning that you've got, your route will be RPL. If you are a young person that feel that I want to be this, then your route will either be at TVET college or through a proper apprenticeship. So opportunities exist across the board. Just go out there, obtain information.
Develop and grow yourself. It is important that we also invest in ourselves. Don't be so reliant on the state to just put opportunities in your hands. It's also up to you to get up and ensure that you get involved and do better for yourself. Who wouldn't want to develop and grow? Who wouldn't want to take advantage of all these opportunities that are being given to you to ensure that you become the best version of yourself? Mr. Tebello Mokoena, thank you so much for your time and for all the knowledge. Go over to all the websites you mentioned. Then when you're done, come back here to stay tuned on the Level Up podcast, where we make sure you get involved with all the necessary tools, resources, and conversations to ensure that you know what you are doing. He is the Senior Manager at Services SETA for Quality Assurance, and he joins us on the Level Up podcast to give you all the information you need. Stay tuned. Some may think that artisan programs are only for people who didn't do well at school. Now, this is false. Artisan development is for anyone passionate about technical skills. Many artisans are highly skilled professionals in fields like electrical work, plumbing, welding, automotive repair, and fitting and turning. You must take a formal course to become an artisan. That's incorrect. While formal courses may help, many artisans gain skills through on-the-job training, workplace learnerships, or even mentorship programs. Some may think that artisan or apprenticeship skills need formal education only. That's false. Artisan skills can be learned through a blend of formal training and hands-on experience. Artisan skills are outdated in today's modern economy. That's also false. Artisan skills are more relevant than ever. Did you know South Africa faces a shortage of qualified artisans in key industries such as manufacturing, construction, and energy? That's all for this week. Don't forget to be back right here on the Level Up podcast, where we ensure that you get involved and become a part of the sector that's building the future. I'll see you next time.